Usually I show a picture of a young girl in Korea during the war with her younger brother or sister on the back. And I show it because my mother had to go through that experience. And so when both my mother and father were young, they went through the Korean War. They experienced the war. And both of them were Korean War refugees. They decided, because at the time in 1961, 62, 63, there was so much upheaval in Korea that they decided that their children would have a better opportunity if we went to the United States. So they came to the United States, and I grew up in Iowa, right? Iowa is what in Korea you'd call 아주 시골, right? It's really in the middle of nowhere, right?
저도 그 미국에서 이제 중학교, 고등학교 시절을 보냈었어요. 근데 그 당시에는 전 되게 힘들었었거든요. 근데 총장님 같은 경우도 잘 적응하셨는지가 되게 궁금하더라고요.
I came when I was 5, and the kids there had never seen an Asian person before, right? So there's one nasty kid who would come up to me every day, slap me across the face, and call me flat face. Right? So this is when I was 5 years old. And one basketball game that we went, one of my best friends growing up was an African-American guy, a black guy, who was a great player. And as we ran out, they started screaming, "You chink, you nigger," I mean, just every nasty word, and they spit on us, right? They spit on us. I will never forget it. I think I'm one of the few Asians who've been spit on, right? My parents absolutely valued education, right? But it's a very old term, 치맛바람, right? They used to call it, right? My mother was not like that. I think my parents' focus was to create an environment where their children would be interested in learning, right? And the quality of the math and science education were not great, right? But I think I had a very well-rounded educational experience. Because I also played sports, right? So I played on the golf team. I was quarterback on the football, 미식축구, I was a quarterback on the football team. And my identity was as much as an athlete as it was as a student. And so what I learned through sports, how to deal with defeat, how to deal with the egos that are all around you and make them meld into something that's better. And that's really the most important thing. So, I told you about my high school educational experience. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my other educational experiences. So, I was the valedictorian, and I had very good test scores. And so I went and I asked my counselor at Muscatine High School, where should I apply for school? And she said, you have really good scores, and you're a good student. So not only should you apply to the University of Iowa, you should also apply to the University of Wisconsin, right? So that was the extent of their thinking, that, Ivy League, this kind of thing never happened. And so I went to a summer science program where I met all of these kids. Frankly, a lot of them were Jewish kids from New York, from Chicago. They came to the University of Iowa to be in a summer science training program. And I met these kids, and they looked at me and said, "Are you kidding? Why would you not go to an Ivy League school?" Right now, so my mother had told my brother and I, "You should go Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, whatever." But we said, "No, we don't want to go there. They have terrible sports teams," right? So we just didn't. That's how little pressure we got, right? When I met those kids in the summer program, I thought, oh my God. And I still hadn't met any Asians. I grew up only with white people and a few, African Americans who were friends. Asian young people are very, go through very similar things. I thought, oh my God, this is my tribe. These are my people. They care about the world. They know about everything from politics to global affairs. Oh my, these are my people. I've got to go there. And so I applied to just two schools, Harvard and Brown. I didn't get into Harvard, but I got into Brown, so I went there. And the most important experience for me going to Brown is it was full of Asian Americans, right? It was so enriching, and there was something called an Asian American movement where we were fighting against racism. I was both exhilarated and angry, and I thought, wow, this is great. You know, there's an Asian American movement. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to become an activist, right? So then, after that exciting first semester, I flew home, and my father picked me up at the airport. Now remember, my father's a dentist, very practical guy, right? So he asked me, Jim, what do you think of studying? I said, okay, Dad, look, I'm going to study philosophy and political science, and I'm going to get involved in political movements as an Asian American, right? So he was driving, he pulled the car over to the side of the road, right? And he turned around, looked at me and said, okay, nobody cares about your views of political science and philosophy. You think anyone wants to hear the political views of a Chinaman like you? Right? He actually said stuff like that to me. When you finish your medical residency, you can study anything you want, but get a skill. Get a skill. And so I'm really grateful to him for doing that, because I have been able to push forward a political agenda, but not because I'm a politician, but because I'm trying to provide health care for the poorest people. And it was so much better to do it that way.